Well, good afternoon, everybody. And I always correlate cold winter days with turning on the oven and baking. And oftentimes we don't have time to bake like cinnamon rolls or a loaf of yeast bread, but there's always time to whip up a quick batch of muffins or a quick batch of biscuits for whatever meal you're preparing. So, I'm Denise Smith. I'm the Nutrition and Food Safety Educator for the University of Wyoming Extension, and I'm located here in Niobrara County. And today we're going to talk to you about how to make perfect muffins and perfect biscuits. So we're going to start with muffins, and muffins are a recipe that you could get a good basic muffin recipe, and then you can add to it whatever you would like. Today we're going to do blueberry muffins, but you could easily take this recipe and put in other berries, raspberries, probably blackberries, or you could put in a dollop of jelly and have a filled muffin. You could make them savory by adding some maybe cheese or bacon bits. So muffins are very versatile. They can be for breakfast, they could be for coffee break, snacks. You would bake them then for a lunch or supper and coordinate what kind of muffins you're going to have that would go with the rest of your menu that meal. So today muffins are very, very simple to make. And so we're going to start out with, we've preheated our oven to 375 degrees. And we're going to start out with whisking our 2 cups of flour. And today we're using just white all-purpose flour. But you could use half whole wheat flour, and they would be as equally as good and a little more nutritious with that whole wheat flour in them. So when measuring flour, again, I always kind of stir it up in the canister to incorporate a little air, because you want your flour to be nice and fluffy when you measure it. You don't want it packed in your measuring cup, which then produces way too much flour for your recipe, and whatever you're baking will be very dry. Then using the level side of your knife, just level it off. And always for muffins, you want to do the dry ingredients in one bowl and the moist ingredients in another. And then we'll alternately combine those to keep your muffins nice and fluffy and airy. Okay, so we've got our 2 cups of flour. Then we're going to add our 2 teaspoons of baking soda, or baking powder, sorry. Don't get confused and use the wrong kind. This is what will leaven or make your muffins rise. And again, using the level edge of your knife, level off your spoon full of baking powder. Next, we're going to have a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And never measure over your bowl that you're mixing in. Measure over an extra bowl, so you can, if you get a little too much, you can shake that off. And then we are going to whisk this together. And again, with a whisk, you're whisking a little more air into that flour, which will help your muffins be nice and fluffy and rise really nice. So at that point, we're going to set that aside for a little bit. In our other bowl, we're going to cream our butter, and we're using real butter today. Baking's always better with real butter, I think. But you can use margarine. Just don't use low-fat or no-fat margarine, because then it's got too much water in it and it makes your product too watery and will not ever rise or be tender. So we're first going to beat our butter with an electric mixer until it's kind of creamed. Then we're going to add our 1 cup of sugar and beat that till it's kind of a pale yellow color. Now sugar, you can dip your cup down into that sugar canister, kind of shake it off, make it level, and then put it in here. Sugar is not as critical. It's going to pack down, and that's what you want it to do in that cup. If you have a stand mixer, this does really well in like a KitchenAid stand mixer. I don't have one of those at home, so I'm used to this. Erin, on the other hand, lives by her KitchenAid stand mixer. Now we want to get that butter out of there, and you can see it really likes to clump up in there. And so our butter has been sitting out since morning. It was soft, but maybe not soft enough to do this, but we'll get it that way. You also don't want to melt your butter in the microwave, because then your mixture is a little too runny. So if you can set your butter out early and get that cube of butter nice and soft, it will work better. If you are going to make savory muffins, like with bacon bits, make sure those bacon bits are cooked ahead of time and crumpled up. If you're going to do cheese, use like shredded cheese works better. Okay, Okay, at this point we are going to add our eggs, and we're going to add 2 eggs. And again, we don't break those eggs right into our mixing bowl, because if by chance one of our eggs was not good, it would have contaminated the rest of our mixture. So there's 1 egg. And just a little reminder, you should not be eating raw muffin batter or raw biscuit dough. Most people think it's because of the raw eggs, and that's one reason we don't eat it. But the other is all of these products contain flour, and flour is considered a raw ingredient and can have bacteria. In fact, it's found to have can have E. coli. So as good as this batter is going to be, and that goes for cake batters, cookie batters, brownie batter, anything with raw flour and raw eggs. So we're going to beat our mixture with our eggs. And now it's a beautiful bright yellow color. And we're going to mix in our teaspoon of vanilla. And again, I'm going to use an egg shell to measure over. Once we get this beat in really well, okay, now we are going to alternately beat in our milk and our flour mixture. So we're going to use a cup of milk. Today we're using 1%. Again, you could use whole or 2% or skim, whatever you would like. We always have 1% at our house, and it is calorie savings a little because you're going to get some calories by eating some muffins. So if you can cut down a little, that would be great. So we're alternately going to put in half the flour into our mixture. And just again, spoon it in lightly. Don't just plop it in, because you don't want to unincorporate all the air that you've just incorporated. Okay, with that, we're going to pour in half of our milk. And we're going to stop and scrape down our sides really good to make sure we have all the flour and everything down into the batter. And at this point, we will go ahead and add the rest of our flour mixture carefully. And this is when a stand mixer is really, really nice, because our batter is getting pretty thick, and it's hard often in these littler mixers. But a stand mixer is a huge investment money-wise, and you also have to have a kitchen big enough that there's a place to either let it sit on the counter or store it. So those are some considerations when thinking about buying a mixer. Usually most college students' apartments or houses don't have room for all the extra luxuries. So a hand mixer fits easily into a drawer, and it's still very usable. So once again, we're going to scrape down our sides one last time. Give it one last little mix. And then we want to, I always pull the beaters up slowly out of the batter to let as much batter beat off as can, so you're not wasting that batter. Our last step is with a spatula like I have here, or a wooden spoon, again because you want to treat this batter very gently. We're going to fold in our blueberries. I've already measured them. I have 1.5 cups. Today we're using fresh blueberries. And with fresh blueberries, you're going to get a much prettier product. Frozen blueberries will be just as delicious, but oftentimes as those blueberries thaw as you're baking, your muffins will turn purple. So it's always better if you can use fresh fruit, but oftentimes fresh fruit is not available. And so frozen fruit is our next best option. And you can see they're easily mixed in. From here, we're going to put them in our prepared muffin tins. Today, we are going to use muffin papers. If you were taking these muffins to county fair, you could not put them in a paper. They have to be in the pan so that they will just come out. I find putting them in the papers, they are much easier cleanup than baking them in just the bare pan with greased wells. And they're also easier to take on the go, whether it's in your lunchbox, on your way to work, whatever. They're just easier to transport in a paper. You want to fill each muffin cup about 2/3 full, and this will yield approximately 18 muffins. So as you fill them up, just make sure they're all kind of evenly filled. Once they bake, you want them to be really pretty brown on the top. You don't want a lot of air tunnels when you open them up. If there is a lot of air tunnels, you have mixed them way too much, so just be careful of that. You can get really pretty decorative papers to use for every holiday, any occasion, any color scheme. So you can be creative that way. Today we're going to sprinkle a little crystally sugar on the top to give them a nice kind of crunchy, sparkly texture on the top. So what else have I forgotten, Erin, about muffins?
Talking about mixers, if you do like to cook and you want, like, the sooner you make that investment of your KitchenAid mixer, the longer you're going to have the use of it. A lot of them are still going 20, 30 years.
50 years.
So if you do really enjoy cooking, that is one thing I wish I had made the investment sooner, because I do love to cook and bake. And I love my stand mixer. I also love my hand mixer and use it lots too. So there is that. The nice thing about muffins, like in the papers, they're easy to share this way.
And if you have little kids at home, muffins are something that is easy for little kids to start learning to bake early. And my oldest grandson is 4, and he loves to cook. So whenever he's at our house, we're baking something. So I think we did pancakes again over the weekend. I think next time he's staying, we're going to try some muffins, because they are very easy for them. You may have to help them with the mixer a little, but you can definitely have them measure and do all of that. And this is going to make a little more than the 18, so we'll go ahead and fill these others up. So you can figure out what is your favorite kind of muffin.
This one.
Yeah, it needs a little more. That's what I was looking. I know there are several recipes out there for, like, the Cheddar Bay biscuits that are popular at Red Lobster, and they are way easy to make at home. So You can get on the internet and find a recipe for that. And they're one of my favorites, are the Cheddar Bay biscuits.
I did purchase some silicone baking cups, thinking that would cut down on having to buy baking papers. And I've used them a couple times now, and I'm not sure I love them for the muffins. I think if you were going to eat them all that day, that would be fine, but
they're very hard to wash.
Yeah. They're better in the dishwasher. But they're still a pain. And I think the muffin texture, like, not really texture, but they got a little soggy.
This crystal sugar we just bought in the baking aisle at the grocery store, and it just can be used on a lot of different things. You could use it to top cupcakes or brownies, or
when I use the crystal sugar on top of, we've been making blueberry muffins just because they kind of seem to be in season, on sale a lot lately, is it definitely makes them taste like straight from a bakery, where most of the time from a bakery you get those, they have that crystal sugar on top, and you just get that extra little crunch on the top, and it's a big hit at my house.
So with that, we will put them in to bake, and we will be back in about 20 minutes or so and show you our finished product, and then do the biscuit recipe.